Alright, in this tutorial I'm going to show you how to dock with a spacecraft. I'm going to start by getting to orbit, then I'm going to get the encounter with the maneuver node, and then I'm going to do the docking. If you want to skip the first part about orbit and encounter, go to 6 minutes and 30 seconds. So we're going to start here on the ground though, and there's what I'm trying to dock with, that orbital fuel tank, and you'll see it's in a pretty circular orbit. It's around 75,000 up. It's just above the atmosphere, both the periapsis and the apoapsis, just above the atmosphere. So it should be pretty easy to dock with. Just a heads up, I kind of do a bit of a sloppy launch here. So if you already know how to get to orbit, don't worry about this. Like I said, skip to 6 minutes and 30 seconds in the video here. I'm just knocking off my boosters, activating my second stage. So once I get my apoapsis in the bottom left corner over 70, I'm going to cut it. I actually let it go up to 107. It doesn't need to be perfectly in sync with the orbit that you're trying to match. In fact, I find it a little bit easier to overshoot it a little bit. So here I'm just going to head up to apoapsis and extend my orbit all the way around. Just burning horizontally here, extending my orbit all the way around. I'm not worrying about trying to get the encounter right now. I'm just simply trying to get to orbit. Now once I get the periapsis out of Kerbin, I actually eject my booster. I want that to burn up in the atmosphere. I don't want to leave that as debris in orbit, so I'm going to decouple here and activate my final stage. This is the one we're going to be docking with. I'm just going to raise my periapsis here up above the atmosphere, and now I have a stable orbit. So the next part is going to be getting the encounter. And how I'm going to do this is, you see I'm already aligned with the orbit in question. I launched the same way I launched that rocket. So I'm just going to time warp here, and because my orbit is a little bit higher than the orbit of the craft I'm trying to match, I'm going to be moving slower. And so I'm slowly going to get caught up to by the probe that I'm trying to dock with. And you'll see once it keeps updating here, the next intersect is always closer than the last one. Now it could be further, and you might have to go all the way around before you catch it. But I'm just going to speed up time here and do a couple orbits until I see that the encounter is pretty close. And the next orbit will do it. There we go, they're like right next to each other. So you can see my intersect is at, now it says 230. I'm not quite sure why it updated there, but I'm going to take this encounter anyway. So the way I do this is pretty non-scientific. I just kind of mess with the maneuver node, and I see which directions pulling it actually changes the intersect distance for the better. So which way makes it smaller, and I just kind of mess with it and figure out which ways make it smaller, and I keep pulling until it stops making the separation closer. So here I'm going to pull radial out, and you see that the separation is getting smaller and smaller and smaller. It gets down to under 10 kilometers here. Now I actually end up not getting it perfect after this whole time, and I think I end up calling it around 1.9 or so kilometers, and then I do a second maneuver later to adjust it closer. But I'm just going to speed this up here. I start messing around with the maneuver node and just trying to get this closer. I actually am using the maneuver interface in the bottom left right now. If you haven't used this, it's very useful. It lets you increment your velocity in all those directions by an adjustable amount by the scale on the right. That's a little easier than just pulling the maneuver node in the orbit kind of willy-nilly. So I just keep messing with it. I'm trying to get the separation smaller. I really want it under 1 kilometer, but I'm actually not able to do it in this maneuver. So I end up giving up and just taking it at about 1 kilometer because I'm getting too close to the node. I need to do this burn now. So you can see the burn's in about 20 seconds here. I'm hitting the maneuver button on my SAS. It's going to take me right to where I need to burn. Now here's a little trick I do I'm going to show you. So you notice it says the intersect, and that's theoretically the intersect after you do the maneuver, but that's not perfect. So usually what I do is I align with the maneuver via SAS, and then I actually cancel the maneuver and I click stabilize just so I'm going to sit there and I just watch the distance go down, and I cut it when I'm getting close and kind of increment it a little bit. This lets me do it manually and see how close I'm getting. So I take 1.8 kilometers there. That's good enough for now. I'm going to do another maneuver here just to get it a little bit closer. Again, I do the same thing. I'm just kind of messing with it. I'm pulling the vectors here and there, trying to get a close encounter. And there, 0.6 is really good. I'm just going to take that. So I'm going to do the same trick here, so you'll see me do it again. I'm going to warp up to the maneuver, and then I'm going to take SAS to the maneuver. Click on maneuver there with SAS on. It'll move me after the warp. There we go. And then I notice, oh, I'm just burning normal. So I'm just going to click the triangle and stick to that and get rid of this maneuver so that I can watch the distance go down and I can stop it when I want to stop it. So see, I canceled it, and now you can see the separation's going to update in real time. I'm going to do a really tiny low thrust burn here, just kind of inching it along, letting it get closer, and you can watch the separation just goes down. I find it easier to watch that instead of just do the maneuver and then see where it put you. That's one little trick that I like. So now, once I've got this nice intersect here, I'm going to warp up to the encounter, and now is when we're actually going to start the docking. So the way that you need to dock here is you'll notice my relative speed is 171 meters per second. You need that to be 0 to dock with it, obviously, but you need it to be 0 when you're already at it, when you're actually close to it. So the way that you go about doing this is you get really close to it, and then you burn retrograde to the target. So notice I click the top middle there, and it targets me to the target instead of the orbit. Then you can just click the retrograde in SAS, and now if you burn in this direction, you're going to lower that relative velocity for your target. Now, when the relative velocity for your target is 0, that means you're traveling at the same speed. And if you're at the same point in your orbit as the target and you're traveling at the same speed, that means you're in exactly the same orbit as your target, and you're not going to move relative to it, and you can dock with your target. So I'm just kind of coming in on the target here, and I'm waiting for this burn. I'm going to real quick put up a maneuver because I'm curious how long this burn's going to take. So I just pull out here, do 150. It says it's going to take 6 seconds. I'm deleting this. I just wanted to know how long the burn was going to take. So if it's going to be 6 seconds, I can let myself get very close to it. If you see in the bottom left corner, I'm going to get about 600 meters away from the target in 25 seconds. It's going to take me only 6 seconds to do the burn, so I'm going to let myself get about that close before I start the burn. Here I'm coming up on it. I'm going to start the burn pretty soon, and that's going to get rid of my velocity relative to the target, put me in the exact same orbit as the target, and I'm not going to move relative to it. So see the relative velocity is going down. I knock up my thrust to kill it faster, and then knock it down to get it perfect. So see, I put my thrust really low to get these last few meters per second. Now here's how you dock. What you do is you get your target velocity down to 0 by burning retrograde to the target, and then you burn towards the target. And you're going to do this a bunch of times in little increments to put you closer, and then you cancel your velocity again because you're not going to hit it perfectly on the first one. You'll see here, I only do about 2.8 meters per second, just a little bit. And I turn on RCS here because that's how I'm going to stop myself when I get there. I'm not going to use my engines anymore. From here on out, I'm going to use RCS, and I'm going to use docking mode. In the bottom left, you see I just clicked docking mode. So I'm coming up on the target, and the way I like to stop this velocity, this tiny 3 meters per second as I get closer, is I point myself prograde, so in the direction that I'm heading, and I hold control in docking mode with RCS on. And what that does is it burns my RCS backwards. So if I'm pointed prograde and I hold control and do RCS backwards, that's going to cancel my velocity. That's the same thing as burning retrograde, burning prograde backwards. So I do that here. I use my RCS. I point myself prograde, and then I hold control in docking mode, and that's going to cancel my velocity. So now I'm going to do the same thing. I'm 83 meters away, but you saw I wasn't going to hit it. So I cancel my velocity, I point myself towards the target again, and I do another burn. This time, I'm not going to use my engine again. I'm going to use my RCS thrusters. I actually switched over to the probe here, and what I've done is I've clicked on the on our spacecraft that we came in with, and I hit target on that. So I point the probe that we're docking with towards our spacecraft. I actually am warping to daytime here because I really wanted better lighting. It puts me a little bit further away, so you'll see this process again. This is inefficient, you don't need to do this, but I wanted it to be daytime. So I select the fuel tank as my target, point myself retrograde, see I'm going 1 meter per second, so I'm going to cancel this with RCS. This time I pointed myself retrograde, so you can just hit shift to go forward if you're pointed retrograde to cancel the velocity. Now I'm pointing towards the target. I'm going to go towards the target now. I want to go into it. I hold shift with the RCS on in docking mode, and what that does is it's basically like using an engine, but with RCS. It just pushes you forward while you're holding shift. So now I'm coming up on the target. I'm again going to cancel this velocity, because if you notice, the prograde vector is not pointing at the target. That means we're not heading perfectly towards the target. So what you want to do is point yourself prograde, turn on RCS, and be in docking mode, of course, and then I'm going to hold control, because I'm pointed prograde. I want to burn backwards with RCS, so I'm going to hold control here in a second. I'm letting myself get a little bit closer before I do this. There's the burn. I do it backwards. I hold control, 0 velocity. I'm going to go towards the target now. I'm going to move in. Now, an annoying thing about Kerbal Space Program is it won't let you point towards the prograde and retrograde vectors automatically if you're going less than 1 meter per second. So that's going to come up here in a second. I'll show you. So I'm just moving in towards the docking port here. I'm going to cancel my velocity one last time. And see, I accidentally go under 1 meter per second, so I can't point myself prograde. So actually what I do is I turn off RCS, I turn on SAS, keep that on, it was on before. And I'm just going to maneuver myself towards the prograde vector manually, and then turn back on RCS and hold control in docking mode to slow that down. The reason I turn off RCS to maneuver like that is because whenever you use RCS, you're going to move your vehicle a little bit and change your velocity. So whenever I'm maneuvering and I'm just like turning around, I turn off RCS and turn on SAS. So I've clicked on the probe, and I've clicked control from here, from the docking port. That just means that the probe is going to control itself from the docking port. It makes it very easy to dock. And here we go, point towards target, hold shift again, come in real nice and slow like. And here we are. That's gonna be it. We dock. Perfect. So real quick, here's another nice thing you can do. If you're trying to refuel, you wanna hold Alt and right click on the fuel tanks, and then you can do in there. And now it's putting fuel from the big one into the small one, refueling my tank. And that's pretty much it. I hope this helped. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments.